Point and Click Productions presents the ongoing diary of a psychologist in the COVID era. Today, with the theme of it is the best of times, it is the worst of times, and with a special guest, a 13-year-old young man who shall remain nameless, whom I've invited today to join me for this discussion. Uh, thanks for coming.
Uh, you're welcome.
Yeah. So, as usual, I'm unscripted. I have asked my guests to think about some of the good things and some of the not so great things that are impinging on his life as a 13-year-old. And, well, what comes to mind, for instance, in terms of maybe something surprising about this lockdown, this seemingly endless lockdown, which, I'm 50, you're 13. It's got to feel a lot longer to you, being, of course, a larger percentage of your life.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the both good and bad comes from the fact that we're stuck with this. We're stuck with wherever we live. And that means that we have to make that place nice because we can't go many other places, which on the one hand means there's an element of stress. On the other hand means we're more motivated to clean up and also to keep relations with the rest of the family fairly friendly.
Interesting. So with being more motivated to keep, let's say, not only the house, but let's say not only your house, but relationships with your relatives fairly friendly. What effect has that been having?
Well, I feel like in the short run, a fairly stressful thing of I'm stuck with these people, these schmucks.
Stuck with these schmucks.
But I feel...
Can you identify with I'm stuck with these schmucks?
But I feel like kind of in the long run, it is good for the overall dynamic, assuming no one's pushed past their breaking point, which, knock on wood, hasn't happened yet.
Great. What do you mean by good for the overall dynamic? What would that entail?
Well, just we're pushed to learn what we need to do to make things work for everyone in situations like this. And at first that's somewhat stressful, but after a little while it starts to be more clear that this is maybe a good thing in the long run. At least that element of it.
That you're learning, that a family learns to be more, I don't know, maybe more resilient or have more effective communication.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Okay. How about academically? What do you feel like the impact has been?
Well, I've been homeschooled for a while before this, so I feel like for me the impact has been mostly positive because a bunch of new homeschooling resources are opening up because now everyone's homeschooled. I think for people who weren't homeschooled to begin with, it might be a somewhat difficult transition. But my sister wasn't, and she seems to be doing pretty well for herself. Having some trouble with lacking any structure, but
but you're more accustomed to the lack of structure.
I'm more accustomed to the lack of structure.
Yeah, and
I think there are a lot of new resources opening up, and that's a fairly useful thing.
What would be an example of a new resource opening up?
Well, people just in general are more willing to do stuff through Zoom and through the internet, and so I mean there are things, internet classes and stuff that have already existed, but there's more awareness of them now.
Okay. And for you, like digital natives, your generation, this internet process or this replacement of in-person stuff with online, maybe Zoom meetings, for instance, doesn't pose so much of a sense of interference.
No, I think the most interfering thing is the time delay. So people kind of sometimes interrupt each other without
Right.
intending to.
Yeah.
But also just when
Yeah, when it fritzes out. Yeah.
But for the most part, more people are using Zoom and similar services. It's easier to get stuff through that now because so many other avenues have closed.
So some stuff has become available that wasn't available before.
Or not as available.
Not as available. What about socially?
Socially, I feel like overall it's been a bad thing. Going to social events is like I had some in-person classes that nope, and a lot of my social life was happening there.
Yeah, so the in-person classes that are now nope.
Yeah.
Because there's no go. So what were some examples of some things you had to give up because of the lockdown?
Well, just a lot of friends that I went to Kung Fu with that I'm not really that close with, and I don't think I have any of their contacts.
Yeah.
Like meeting up on Zoom, I can't really talk to them anymore.
Yeah. So it's kind of like people who maybe you had only a kind of friendly relationship, but they weren't really close friends.
Yeah, close acquaintances, friends light kind of.
They've dropped away because there's no venue for that anymore.
Although one thing that's flourishing right now is D&D. Because D&D is much easier to schedule through Zoom.
So that's Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons.
A traditional role-playing game which really lends itself to connecting online and I guess provides a convenient, I guess, pretext or reason to get together that removes some of the awkwardness, maybe.
Yeah, and it gives you something to do when you don't really have much to talk about.
Right. And then video games also have that option for those who...
Although most games that I play are single player, but...
But, yeah.
There are some that can be multiplayer, like Minecraft.
Okay. Well, as we move toward the end of the interview, what do you think is, let's say, the single most painful thing about the lockdown and about the whole situation that we face with COVID-19 and related limitations? The most difficult thing that comes to mind.
Just, I guess, the overall sense of pressure and being trapped sometimes. And having so much fewer options.
Yeah. Feeling trapped, a sense of pressure because we were confined. Having fewer options. And by the same token, what comes to mind as the single biggest upside for you of the current situation?
I'd say just learning skills that I might not learn or not as soon had this not happened. Learning how to be stuck with someone.
There you have it. Well, thank you again for agreeing to talk with me here. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah. And there you have it. So there's another perspective on the best of times, the worst of times. Point and Click Productions is brought to you by Portland Mindfulness Therapy and the letter E, and Robin Hitchcock. Yeah.